If anybody has a question while I'm doing this demo, whether you're live here or whether you're on my computer, feel free to ask it, all right? I'd be happy to answer your questions as is. I actually have never done this synchronous thing before, like this fall when we were hybrid. I just recorded everything and kids watched it at their leisure. So this is the first time I've done this. So bear with me. If there's like things that are unclear, please let me know. Okay, so last week, you guys were supposed to make the body of your mug. And whether you made the wide bottom one or the wide top one or the hourglass one was totally up to you. But the first thing you're going to do today is you're going to pull that out and you're going to see which stage it's in. So I just pulled this out and it seems like it's pretty leather hard. Like if I tried to move it, I could move it, but it's still firm. And that's a good thing. We want it in that leather hard stage so I can still join stuff to it. But when you first pull your mug out today, one of the first things I want you to do is just take your wet sponge and just hydrate it just a little bit, just to really make sure that when you put the handle on today, because that's kind of your main task is to put the handle on today, that it's actually going to stick. So we need to make sure that that surface just has a little bit of hydration to it. You're going to come back and you're going to do a lot of scraping and refining of this shape later. But first, we're just going to add some water to the surface. Especially if your clay is like really leather hard, like basically almost bone dry. We need to kind of assess that situation and get it rehydrated so that we can actually make that handle stick. So I just rehydrated this. Now I'm going to put it back in its bag because it's got to chill for a little bit because my next thing is making the handle. So the way I'm going to show you to make a handle is not the only way to make a handle, but it's kind of the professional way to make a handle because once you've done it a lot of times, it's really quick. So you won't maybe find it so quick because it's your first time doing it, but this is how professional potters make handles because it allows them to pull multiple handles really quickly and have them mass produced, basically, like all kind of looking the same. So to make a pulled handle, you will need a chunk of clay about the size of a small apple. So I have some clay left over from last week that I just re-wedged that'll work perfectly fine. So I'm going to wedge that a little bit. And the wedging step, super duper important because you're going to be pulling the clay, pulling a handle. And if the clay is really airy, it's going to tear more easily. So you do want to make sure it's wedged really well. And then once you've wedged it, you're going to make it into an ice cream cone shape. So it's more pointy on one side. So to make it more pointy, I'm just going to make my hands into a V shape. It's hard to find the right angle. Making it into a V shape and then rolling it so it is more of an ice cream cone. So it's pointy on one side. Now, for those of you at home, you're going to need a bucket of water for this next step. For those of you who are here, you're going to be able to just use the water at the sink and have the sink running and use that for pulling your handle. People who are at home, don't use your sinks because somebody told me that their parents were really mad at them for getting clay in their sink. So don't use your sinks, people. This clay cannot go down your sink. It can go down my sink here because I've got a clay trap in my sink. Nobody has a clay trap at your house. So we got to keep all the clay kind of contained. So if you're at home, just find an old bucket to use for this. So to make a pulled handle, I'm going to hang on to the fat part of this ice cream cone, and I'm going to pull down on the skinny part of the ice cream cone. And I'm going to pull down repeatedly on that skinny part of the ice cream cone until I stretch a really thin, basically coil of clay, and that's what's going to become my handle. So to do this, I'm going to use these two fingers, my thumb and my index finger, and I'm going to make an O shape with those fingers. And I'm going to, as I'm pulling down on the clay, I'm going to make that O get smaller. So I'm stretching the clay and making it get thinner and thinner as I'm pulling downward on it. And it's kind of an awkward exercise to do, but it's like milking a cow. It's that same kind of motion. I'm sure you've all milked cows. You know what I'm talking about. So it's that same motion of pulling downward to stretch the clay, that O shape getting smaller and smaller. Okay, so I'm hanging on to the fat part, and I'm constantly going to be dipping my hand in this bucket of water because if my hand or if the clay dries out, the handle that I'm starting to make will just rip. And if it does rip, it's not the end of the world. In fact, I'm expecting that since this is your first time doing it, that the clay might rip. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make that O shape, and I'm stretching the clay downward in really small increments, little bit at a time. And if I squeeze it too much in one spot like that, see how it got kind of crimped there? It might break in that spot, right? And then that's okay because I have more clay up here that I can just stretch downward. So you got to be kind of gentle. And I'm also, with this hand, I'm kind of turning it as I'm pulling the clay downwards so that like the wrinkles of my hand are going to make lines in this handle. And so if I turn the clay as I'm pulling down on it, I don't get those little lines. So I'm going to keep pulling until it's about, I don't even know what to say, that's maybe a ½ inch thick. If you have a really small mug that you've made, you want your handle to be small too. So, so that handle is pretty decent. So now I'm going to take my tray and I'm going to take the fat part of my ice cream cone and I'm just going to let the fat part sit on the tray and I'm going to let the handle sit arched over like that. And I'm going to let it get leather hard in that arched position. So I'm going to set this to the side. Those of you who are here, once you make your handle, you'll be able to use a hairdryer and dry it to the point where it's leather hard because you're only going to use the best part of it. You're not going to use the whole thing. So you need it to get leather hard and then you'll cut and keep and attach the best part of it. Those of you who are at home, you can let this sit out for 5 minutes or you could also use a hairdryer if you have a hairdryer at home. So I'm going to let that sit out for a little bit. And while it's sitting out, I'm going to work on refining my form a little bit. So I have my little plastic ID card and just because I need to kill some time and I need to make this look better before I put the handle on, I'm going to be doing some scraping and shaping. So I'm putting a bend in my card and I'm using this to remove the lumps and bumps that are on the surface of my clay. So I'm just trying to scrape and refine this whole surface before this handle goes on. Because really, today's your last day to make the form look good. Because tomorrow we're going to be starting to paint the engobe on here and putting your designs on here. And once the engobe is on there, it's too late to make your form look good. So you got to do all the refining and prettifying of your project, making it look all pretty today. So I'm just trying to scrape the bottom half of my hourglass. And then, so I cut part of my ID card to be kind of round. So you can do that too if you want. I'm going to use the round side in the middle here. And then I'll use the flat side again up on the top to just really make this as flat and as strong as possible. Same thing with your lip. If your lip isn't flat up at the top, you can use your card to shave a part of that lip down and make it more level. You can use your sponge. If there's areas of your lip that are really thick, thicker than other areas, use your plastic card to carve away some of that thickness so that the lip looks more uniform. So really spend a lot of time, like 5-10 minutes, just really making this form look its best. The lip should look amazing. The inside should look amazing. The outside should look amazing. Just get it all as good as you possibly can. Then, when you feel like the outside is looking its best, then we're going to turn our eyes back to the handle. And so my handle has not been sitting out long enough to get leather hard, but that's okay. I'm just going to move on with it. So the problem that's going to cause for me is when I cut this and take this handle off, it's going to be really floppy. So that's why letting it get leather hard would be good. Okay, so I'm going to take my card and I'm going to cut straight down into the handle to establish where the good part of my handle is, and then all of this is going to be my good handle. This extra clay, I'm going to end up wedging that and putting that back in my bag because it's still going to be usable. It's just not going to be part of my handle. So I mentioned to you that a handle should look like half a heart. So I'm going to lay this on my table now, and I'm going to put it in that half a heart shape, and I'm going to cut the top part of my handle, and I'm going to cut the bottom part of my handle so they are all in a straight line. So I'm going to hold that up so you can see what I'm talking about. See how this and this are in a straight line, right? This and this are at the same level. So the reason that's important is because that's what's going to allow it to sit flush up against the surface of your mug. See how that's going to just hug that mug really nicely? Hi. Thank you. All right, so now my next step is to attach this handle. So I need to decide, okay, do I want it this big? If it's this big of a handle, that means I'll be able to fit 3 fingers inside that handle when I'm picking up my mug, which is awesome. Maybe you want it to be a much shorter handle. This was a mug that I made last week. This would only fit 1 finger. Okay, so if you're doing a shorter mug, probably a smaller handle would be a good way to go. And then this one's kind of in the middle. This is kind of a small mug with a bigger handle. This could probably fit 2 fingers comfortably. So just decide how big you want that handle to be. Since I've got this big hourglass shape, I probably should do a bigger handle. So I'm going to use this whole thing. So I want to be able to tip my mug on its side so that it doesn't roll around. So I'm just putting it on a towel. I have towels that you guys can use when you get to this step. And then I am going to set my handle on the mug where I want it to go. I'm going to get some slip and my fork, and I'll have tools for you guys to use here too. And I'm going to score and slip both the handle and, even more importantly, where it's going to attach on the mug, because this really needs to be a very strong attachment. Once it's fired, this has to support a lot of weight. So we really want to make sure that it's truly bonded on there well. So I just scored and slipped. I want to make sure that my handle is in a straight line, like not one end kind of like off-centered with the rest. And then to really make sure that it's a strong connection, I'm going to roll a tiny little coil of clay, and I'm going to wrap that around my 2 connection points. And I'm going to use that tiny coil to meld. So this little coil is going to wrap around here like a little bracelet. And then this little coil is going to wrap around here. Thank you. Okay, and then that's going to be melded. You can use your popsicle stick for this or your fingertip if your finger can reach inside those little nooks and crannies. And I'm going to use that excess clay to really make sure that my handle is melded on very well. And even once you've joined it well, you know you've scored and slipped, you know you've melded, still don't use your handle, all right? The handle really isn't meant to be used until after it's fired. And that's when it will be strong enough to actually hold your mug by its handle. So I'm trying to meld it onto the handle and onto the body of the pot. Okay, and that was pretty quick. So now I would need to do some smoothing to really make that look better because it's pretty rough right now. So I would take my sponge and do some smoothing. But you can see that it fits the mug shape pretty well, right? It's a good proportion. When this is fired and strong enough, I'll be able to lift this mug, no problem, really good sized handle. And so then once you've smoothed everything and gotten rid of all those little melding marks, you've smoothed the bottom, smoothed the lip, smoothed the inside as best you can reach, you're just gonna bag it overnight because we want it to get leather hard again. So no extra paper towel needed, just seal it up in a bag. And tomorrow is when you get to start adding the design. So you're gonna be cutting up the paper, sticking the paper to the clay, and then painting your engobe, your colored clay that you've been given in your slip container or in your swag bag. You're gonna be painting over it tomorrow. So all the surface stuff, all the smoothing and everything has to be done today. Okay. Oh, one thing I do need to remind you though, you're going to take a picture of your mug from its side so I can see your handle when you're done attaching the handle for today. And that's your assignment for today. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, what you're doing today. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Or did you just meld it?
I scored and slipped both the cup where it was going to be attached and the coil. Oh, and then the little tiny coil that I joined, that I just melded. Yes. Yep. Because it's such a tiny little piece of clay and it's going to get integrated into the clay so thoroughly that just melding it is fine. Yeah. People who are at home, what questions do you have? People who are at home, you have like 45 minutes, so do the people who are here, to be able to now do this step. So I would encourage you to do this step now, get your photo taken, get it submitted. There's not an attendance question because you just logging into Google will be your attendance today. Same thing for you guys. As long as you logged in, even for a minute, you'll get counted as having been here. And so that's your process for today. People who are hybrid A, who are going to be here tomorrow, remember, you will be wrapping up and bringing in your mug tomorrow. So you're going to be doing the design work, the engobe, the paper designs here tomorrow. So make sure you wrap this up and bring it in tomorrow. And those of you who are here, you're going to bring your stuff home today, and you're going to do the next step at home tomorrow. So people at home, any questions that I can answer before you log off? If you want to stick around and ask a question when it's just you and I, feel free to do so. Otherwise, people who are at home, that's it. You can log off for today. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be here same time tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
See ya.
Bye,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. Thank you. Have a good day.
Is the picture due still at 10 o'clock
Thank you.
tonight?
Yes, yeah, the
Okay.
picture is still due at 10 o'clock, even though I would like you to do it now. But yeah, I didn't change that setting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Have a good day.
Absolutely. Yep, see ya. All right, if anybody's out there and has a question for me, just speak up. Even if I'm not in the picture, I can still hear you.